In every kingdom, there is a ruler, and in television, that person is the showrunner. The success or failure of a series falls on the heads of these storied power players. Join the Hollywood Reporter as we sit down with the game changers behind this year's most buzzed about programs. On this episode, we have Nick Pizzolatto from True Detective, Vince Gilligan from Breaking Bad, Carlton Cuse from Bates Motel, Ann Biderman from Ray Donovan, Matthew Weiner from Mad Men, and Aaron Sorkin from the Newsroom. Welcome to the Hollywood Reporter Roundtables, Drama Showrunners. Hello everyone, welcome to the Hollywood Reporter Drama Showrunner Roundtable. I am Stacey Wilson.
I'm Lacey Rose.
And with us we have Carlton Cuse, Nick Pizzolatto, Vince Gilligan, Matthew Weiner, Aaron Sorkin, and Ann Biderman.
I think we're going to start off. Matt, you are obviously in the throes of capping off the final season. Many of you have been in that position before, and I'm hoping you can offer, perhaps starting with you, Vince, a little advice.
I don't know what advice I would give. Enjoy it. I mean, the old time-honored cliche advice: enjoy it while it's still going on, which is hard. It's hard. No matter. I mean, it's not about, it's because you're in the middle of it and you're working your ass off, and it's the way I feel like I live my whole life is I'm always looking backward. I'm not really in the moment, So that would be. It's like the goofiest, most lame-ass cliche advice of all, but I would say enjoy.
Well, I mean, I talked to you when you were at one point near the end there. That was pretty hard, right?
Well, I was freaking out.
It sounded really bad.
Yeah, I was just like, man, this is gonna suck. So, it's certainly not, and just enjoy it.
No, I mean the experience.
Kinda sucked.
Forgetting about whatever the creative part of it is, which is, at this point, everybody here knows that there's some autopilot there. You're doing your job, being busy. The more work there is to do, the less I thought about it.
Yeah.
But I do remember talking to you near the end. You directed your finale, and
yeah.
I'm going to do that. And I know that the loss is pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, you're just and the loss doesn't hit you till the last day of work is done, and then then it's like, oh man, this is wow, this really did end. It's really over. It's.
Well, it makes me feel better.
That it's going to hurt so much.
I get to experience it twice.
Vince, how did you cope with just tuning out all the pressures? I know you like to, be in your own zone, but how did you manage the expectations from fans, from the network, from yourself, from the cast and crew? How did you do that?
Acupuncture.
Really?
No. I didn't. I mean, it was tough. It was, thank God I didn't get turned into an insomniac, because that's the escape, every night going to sleep, But yeah, I mean, you just gotta get through it. I mean, it was, and most of the pressure at the end of the day is I think we could all. I shouldn't speak for anyone else, but I bet you folks would agree. It's mostly self-imposed, because there's no reason you can't, at least theoretically, tune out all that noise that comes from outside. But easier said than done. But at the end of the day, it really does feel like the worst of the pressure is the self-imposed kind. I mean, is this good enough? That voice in your head that's just kind of telling you it's not good enough. It's not whatever. It's not this. It's not that. And tuning that out, I don't really know how to do that, except that you just. I don't know, I wish I had some great advice for that, so that I could take it in the future. So, I don't know.
Carlton, you've been there. I mean, is there something you wish you would have known in that process?
Well, the thing that I didn't really anticipate is that there were sort of 6 endings to the process. So we finished writing the script, and it was cathartic, and shed a few tears, and then I was actually just telling Matt about this. It's like, then you finish shooting, and then that's kind of a very cathartic moment, and then we went in and we finished scoring the show, and we had Michael Giacchino, who was this amazing composer, and the music was so emotional, and then kind of shed those, we actually locked the cut, there was tears and tequila, and then the scoring. So there were all these kinds of, at every step of finishing, there was this kind of saying goodbye, and then, of course, when we had a viewing party, and then we all sort of said goodbye to each other. And just so I was just wrung out at the end by how many times we'd kind of gone through the process of saying goodbye. And it's the thing is that you have this sort of dual experience of not only saying goodbye to your fictional family, but you're saying goodbye to the 300 plus people you've been working with for 6 years and 121 episodes, and that's really hard. There were people who had gotten married to each other on our crew, and had there was such a kind of familial bond, particularly since we were all in Hawaii, and the show, the community of the show in Hawaii. I mean, it was really the only show there for that period of time, and so it's just it's very emotionally. It was very emotionally draining.
And it sort of begs a bigger question of how do you know when to say goodbye? Sometimes it's not your choice, sometimes it is. And I'm wondering for the rest of you, how do you know when to end a show? How do you know when it's the right time? And Aaron, you're wrapping up Newsroom this year. How is that process unfolding for you?
First of all, I did choose to say goodbye this year, and here's where we are right now. We're in the middle of shooting the second episode, and I haven't yet started writing the third episode. So
you love to keep it real and fresh like that.
I don't love it. It just happens
I think you do.
That way. But I would say this about the pressure, which is, I think we all know, it's a glamorous problem to have, and moreover, when the things you're complaining about are the things you used to dream about, you're in pretty good shape, right? Somebody had said to you, listen, your biggest problem is going to be that you haven't quite fixed the second act problem in your hit TV series. You'd have taken that. But I also think that I'm scared of giving up the pressure. That you said it was self-imposed, and I think that you're right. And when someone says to me, listen, can't you just relax? You get worried. Every time you say the same thing when you're in the middle of writing something that you're never going to be able to finish, and all these pressures and everything. Can't you just take one night and relax and forget all about that? I'm worried that if I did do that, nothing would ever. I wouldn't do it. That I wouldn't finish. That it wouldn't be good. I think the pressure, self-imposed or not, is what's keeping the train running.
You're right. I gotta agree with that.
I think for all of you, whether it was a season or whether it was a series, you all obviously have tremendous work on your resume, and I'm curious sort of about both the pressure and the challenge of following up on that, doing the next thing after having something so strong and so beloved, and all of you have had those things. What does that feel like? You're about to be there. You are just there.
Sounds like narcissistic, but I really feel like this is some kind of intervention directed. What's it like for it to end? And will you ever do anything else? It's like, oh my God.
But is that?
No, I was just saying that in the car on the way over here. I believe in mentorship, even if it's fictitious. Before I had a career or anything, there were people whose careers that I admired, whether it was writers, artists of any kind, and I kind of looked at their lives, and honestly, when I was a half-hour sitcom writer and I saw that The Sopranos had happened to David Chase at 55 years old, that was like very encouraging to me, that I would sort of like, look at how this happened. It happens when it happens. And, people that I admire, who I've gotten to befriend in some way, like, Mike Nichols or Larry Gelbart, who passed away, who had more than one success. You're just kind of marveling at what it is. And they, eventually you get to ask them that question, and they sort of say the same thing, which is, don't do anything that you've done before because you'll be bored, and don't do anything for money. And if you are doing it for money, you will know right away because you will be bored. And that's a more concise, but they both sort of had that message around it. Not that everyone hasn't, whatever, paying your dues, or who knows, even those people, at some point, but that's like an issue of looking at someone's whole career. But when you think about it individually, and I I don't know. I mean, everybody here who's been lucky enough to have something good happen to them, there are so many times, especially when it was first happening, where I would look back and say, what were the steps on the way to this? Yeah. How did it go? How did I think of that? Yeah. When we were changing the name of the agency the first time, someone came up to me, one of my agents actually, and said, you're not going to get rid of the name Sterling Cooper. That's like the best thing you ever wrote. And I was like, the name of the agency is the best? Oh my, I guess it's really good. I guess that was really a good idea. And I'm throwing it away, I guess. I don't know, and you're sort of like, what if I didn't cast John Hamm? What if I'd never met John Hamm? Forget about like the process that goes into having an idea. And you're not the same person that you were when you had that idea. You're just not even near that person. So what comes out of you now, who knows?
I mean, the thing is, whatever your intentions are when you're making television, I mean, there's this alchemy that either happens or it doesn't happen, and it's really out of your control. And as much as you want to control it, you can't. You get lucky, you get the great cast, the network supports your show. They cannot support your show. You get the right time slot. There's all these things that have to kind of coalesce and you only are kind of controlling some small subset of those factors.
Right.
And to your question, if you're as lucky as we've all been here, you're going to get compared to yourself down the road. You guys are about to find that out. It's a small price to pay. I don't want to ever think that I've already written the best thing I'm ever going to write. If somebody came along with a crystal ball and said, listen, you're going to earn a living for the rest of your life, but I can't tell you what it was, but you've already written the best thing that you're going to write, I don't think I could write anymore. That would be really sad. I'm always thinking there's that thing that I always meant to write and it comes out as something else, I can still write it.
But there is the, Bruce Springsteen shows up and he plays Born to Run for you, and you're kind of like, that. He better do that every time I get there.
That's right.
And it's really old. It's some of his older work, and you're like, no, it's Born to Run. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no.
There's something about that. No one here is really capable of enjoying any of that on some level, but there is that.
Clear the dust away from that, and what you have left is that Bruce Springsteen wrote Born to Run. And I hope he feels that way.
We speak of the pressures of Reinvention, but before Reinvention, you sort of still have to get through the series you're currently working on. And I feel like the pressure is to deliver shocking episodes and episodes everyone's talking about on Twitter the minute they unfold, and the next day. I feel like every Monday, some character on a big show has just died, and that's what everyone's talking about. And I'm wondering from a storytelling perspective, some people think that this is a lazy plot device. This is built to just shock and to get people talking. And I'm wondering, from a writing perspective, how do you respond to that? Do you agree? Anne, how do you feel about that?
I'm not quite sure exactly what you're asking. Is it?
Like the shock, in episode 7, we're going to kill so-and-so, and that's going to be the arc of that.
I don't think you're doing it for that reason. I don't think you're sitting there and thinking, that you must have that happen in episode 7. I think I think it has to feel inevitable in some way. Or it is gratuitous. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're sitting at the beginning of the year and thinking, I need this many bodies and they need to come here.
Unless you're The Walking Dead.
I think you really, good storytelling is there is this sense of inevitability to the characters dying.
But the audience does.
Me.
The audience does have certain I just remember being on The Sopranos. Not my show, but they realize that, people coming up and saying, when's Tony going to whack somebody? Why is he in the hospital? What is he doing? Who cares about? And then there was also, the fact that more people died on The Sopranos than the mob had killed during those 7 years, There's genre aspects to it where you kind of, there's different kinds of entertainment. The interesting thing to me is that I find that this sort of, there's almost a kind of like prejudice that of like enforcement of like the way entertainment has to be. And I sort of I like everything. I mean, I don't like everything in everything, but I mean, I like Agatha Christie. I like, soap operas. I like comic books. I like the formula. I have, a Law and Order issue still in my life where I just like to sit down and see. I like Sherlock Holmes. These are the most, formulaic kind of storytelling, and they're eternal. I also like the Bible. I love the way the Bible is told, filled with details and sort of like stringing it out, and then it'll be very narratively dense at different places. I mean, this is like a storytelling, And so the idea that there's this constant proclamation in the public conversation about how a story should be told, and for someone who works, these shows are all so different from each other, it's kind of intolerant on some level, and you hope that there's something for everybody. And you're fighting, it's a competitive environment, you're fighting for eyeballs with storytelling, but there should be, there should be more than one flavor of ice cream.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important too that anything that's going to be worthwhile isn't going to be all things to all people, nor should it be. But I think the aspect of the public conversation you're talking about is that sort of possession that says, no, it should be what I want.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Right. You're sort of like, well, let me see your show. I might not really like it. I don't know, But the story starts on page 1. And there's almost like, no matter how much action you have, no matter what it is, James Bond movie, set piece after set piece, some of those can be sustained and some of them can't. Every once in a while, you have to stop and see, James Bond, in bed. It has to like calm down. And there is a kind of feeling of like, get on with it already. And you're sort of like, will you trust me? There are things that are happening here that will be valuable here. And everybody does that in a different way, and we're lucky enough to not work in the specific network model anymore, where they really did not want a continuing storyline because it was so bad for syndication. And now, I mean, the revelation when I was on The Sopranos that people were watching all 13 episodes, they were just like, oh my God, they're keeping track of it, and we can reference other seasons. And when I worked in network TV, it was like, can we shoot these out of order? That's all we care about. And you're like, well, not if they're going to have an arc. I don't know.
You just mentioned the idea of expectations. And I'm curious, Nick, in your case, were there versions of that episode 8 script where Woody and Matthew's character died? And if
No.
And why not?
Well, because I think the vision that created the story was dictated by the characters and how they behaved in the circumstances I had set out for them. And, it was certainly something I considered, but the trajectory of their personal arcs and where the journey took them was much more interesting to me with them left alive and altered in some way. And it was written towards that ending, the whole time. Because unlike a lot of shows, I've never ended a show before. I've never made a show before. They were all in the can, finished, sealed up before the first episode aired. So there's no possible way I can manage anyone's expectations.
Right.
It's what it is,
And True Detective's a great example of a show that was anchored by 2 huge stars, which did not hurt, of course. It was a wonderful show, but amazing luck. Matthew winning the Oscar during its run. It's just amazing. And I feel like there's never been more pressure now to secure these A-list people to then get the show greenlit or just be able to hire the people you want to hire. And I'm wondering, what are the biggest concessions you've had to make to secure the talent who you need to make the show successful? Do you have any stories?
I mean, I think it's actually the opposite. I think the material is attracting talent, and that the barriers between movies and television are evaporating.
I agree.
And so when I was working on, the kind of conception of Bates Motel, I always had Vera Farmiga in my mind. She was kind of my prototype. I was thinking of like a woman around 40, sexy, smart, who could play, this incredible range of emotions. And I just loved her in some of the things I saw her in. And but I wasn't really, I didn't know that, I didn't think I could get her. And Carrie Aaron and I wrote the first 3 scripts, and I sent them to her with a sort of a mash note saying how much I loved her as an actress. And she said yes, like that was that, it was just, and I was kind of shocked in a way, but I think, if you look at what's being done in the various forms of television, which now sort of is so expansive, it's, streaming, HBO, network, cable, I think there's just, the work is so good. I think actors basically want to do good work, and the barriers don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found it that way. I mean, I don't know what HBO had to pay them, but we didn't have to make any concessions for them. You know, the guys were really right on with the material. Like they wanted to dive into the material. With two guys like that, I guess the overall concession would be that, well, you're not going to use them again. You know, people.
Time commitment issue.
Right. People who do have active cinematic careers aren't going to want to come back for 6 years or 5 years.
I mean, I think your show was a barrier. I think that because, you know, Woody and Matthew did the show, I think that's going to lead to other movie stars doing projects for television.
I hope so, because, you know, like the first thing I did when they arrived for pre-production and rehearsals was I handed them box sets of Deadwood and The Wire. You know, because a lot of times these guys just haven't watched this stuff.
They haven't had time.
Yeah, they haven't had time. Typically, if they're watching something, it's because somebody said, you need to work with this person, you should watch their movie. And they loved them. And they had, like, Woody had never watched Deadwood, neither had Matthew. And, you know, they both loved it. And it's getting to where if serious actors don't want to play superheroes,
There's nothing left.
Yeah, there's nothing left. So, you know, give them a season of television.
If you do say the word drama, you know, and you think about the movie business, and, you know, obviously the Oscars have a lot of dramas in them, but for the most part, a lot of that fragment of entertainment is on television.
Oh,
and it just completely, so I would imagine if you're an actor, it'd be attractive to you.
I think, as a fan of film and TV, there's no question that character and narrative in television over at least the last 10 years, for me, have been far above.
You're going to get a big argument in this room.
I mean, the only
am I wrong?
dramas in the movie business
Am I
are
wrong?
written by Aaron, so that's...
Yeah.
Well, but, you know, like they make like 5 serious adult movies a year now.
all written by Aaron.
All written by Aaron Sorkin.
All in, I think the best theater in America is on television, and that's been true for a few years now. And I have never heard a network head say, you got to get stars for this. Stars just don't have, for some reason on television, stars don't have the same relationship to the material that they do in the movies. I mean, television actually has more of a habit of making stars. You know, Bryan Cranston comes out the other end of Breaking Bad, and a much bigger star than he was when he went in. You know, Jeff Daniels was just the guy we wanted for the show. We weren't given a mandate to go out and find somebody who's done a bunch of Woody Allen movies.
Or Dumb and Dumber.
That's true, though.
Yes,
They do, but there is still I just remember going on the air the same year as Damages and seeing Glenn Close there and thinking like, wow, I would probably watch that before I watched our show. I want to see Glenn Close on TV. I think there is, I believe
But
in,
don't you want to
they
see Glenn
do it.
Close on TV because she's a great actress?
I'm familiar with her work. No one knew who John Hamm was, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's, I sort of like, I remember with The Sopranos, one of the things I loved about it was that I didn't know who those people were, except for Lorraine, and sort of being attracted to that world. But I do think that there, for different reasons, I'm not really disagreeing with you, but I do think that there is always an effort to, especially if you become a star on TV, to that it's a draw. But movie stars coming in, it's kind of an interesting thing for me because part of it is they really have to disappear, or you have to take advantage of what they're bringing with them,
Right.
just like they do in their movies.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
And that's a tough thing. I mean, Brian had to shed, you know, as someone who's like a longtime TV watcher, had to shed Malcolm in the Middle for me, and I actually think it worked with it. It sort of gave it this kind of like, he was an extra, you know, squishy middle-class person.
Yeah.
That helped the story.
But let me ask, I mean, was your show cast contingent when it was?
Yeah, well, now the idea specifically with our show was that we would get our 2 leads before we pitched it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we had those leads when we pitched it, and the main benefit
It's a
there
pretty strong pitch.
Yeah.
is you know,
I want that meeting.
yeah, that like the real benefit of that, you know, but besides being able to sell the show to a wide audience, is that it let us control the show and make it what we wanted, because those guys signed on to do that. and they came with us, you know.
Right.
Next year, you know, we'll see what the new cast brings. But they were fantastic. I mean, I completely understand. I've seen it in movies and TV before, where the movie star walks on screen. Maybe they're in an independent film, and you know, you're like, as a viewer, one of these things is not like the others. You know, like Julia Roberts just walked in, and but those guys, I felt really they did disappear into those roles, and the roles tried to make use of what they brought. You know, they're bringing a sort of Southern, almost retrograde masculinity to it. You know, so right towards that was my.
And Anne, I was curious, we talked a little bit about this last week, actually, securing Liev and John for your show. It sounded like Liev had a lot of input in sort of the casting of other people in the show. How open are you, or at least that's what he intimated, just in terms of feedback. You sound like you were open to him suggesting other actors.
Clearly, it's called Ray Donovan. He's the lead in the show.
Right.
But he did chemistry reads with certain people, you know, which was helpful. Right. And he participated, but you know, I wanted him to be happy with the casting, but ultimately, I don't think, you know, he did participate. Yes, is the answer.
How hard was it to convince him to do it? Because I know that he's never done series TV. It's a big commitment.
You know, he has he claims that I hit him over the head like a seal hunter and dragged him. You know, I think he was ready.
I find that so easy to believe.
You know, I mean, it was hard for him. He has a very active career in the theater.
Right.
You know, and I think in terms of that, it's been frustrating because he plays a very impacted character who doesn't have a lot of access to language. You know, so just on that level, it's been, you know, I mean, he says stuff like, "Look at me, Frank," you know, instead of, you know.
Hamlet.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm not giving him Shakespearean speeches, you know, but I think he's enjoying it, and I think, you know, I didn't want to just make it with anybody. I mean, to go back to an earlier question, I didn't want to make it just to make it. It had to feel like the right fit. And we were lucky enough at that moment. I think it's timing.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, you know, I was sitting there trying to, you know, casting Norma and Norman Bates, like, bad casting, and the show would have been absolutely impossible and disastrous. And so, you know, Freddie Highmore was the guy, and we actually had to work around the fact that he was actually enrolled. He's finishing his degree at Cambridge, and so he had to have like 6 months off to actually go back to Cambridge and finish school. And you know, I moved mountains to get everyone to agree that this was, you know, something that we should do, and they all, you know, saw the virtue of that because he was the guy, and that chemistry and those two actors, I just don't think the show would be possible without them. And I also feel like even if you were doing the feature version, I wouldn't pick anybody beyond Freddie Highmore or Vera Farmiga. Like, they're as good as I believe I could get for that show.
I feel the same way with John Voight, with Paula Malcolmson, with Liev, with, you know, Eddie Marsan.
Yeah.
I mean, just an amazing actor who kind of surprised us. I mean, he was living in England. I had seen him in Mike Leigh movies, you know? I mean, it felt slightly anomalous at first. And he sent in a self-tape because he wanted to be on the show and wanted to change his life. So there you are.
Carlton, you mentioned this idea of sending a note to Vera. What's the sort of wildest thing you guys have done to try and land an actor, whether it was successful or not?
Slept with him.
What else? Is there anything
That's how I
else?
got Bob Odenkirk.
I can tell you Mary Louise Parker, who ended up on The West Wing, left a message on my voicemail at the office saying, "Hi, this is Mary Louise Parker. Josh Lyman badly needs to get laid, and I'm the one to do it." And she was in the next episode.
Nick, you talked about kind of reinvention for season 2, which I'm sure you're deep into that. What do you do with the sort of anthology format you're working with? How do you maintain the tone, the just, I guess, look and feel aside, but also how, obviously Ryan Murphy's done a great job with Coven, sort of similarly, reinventing. But how are you approaching that with season 2 and from the writing perspective?
Well, I don't differentiate between types of writing for myself, like prose fiction, playwriting, screenwriting, it's all the same. And so I'm treating it like this is this year's novel, and in the way that it's going to be in the same genre. And what carries over, I think, is the authorial vision and the authorial voice. The same way you can pick up a book by a particular author, and you have your favorite book by that author, and maybe you have, if you like the author, you have lesser works by him.
Like Elmore Leonard, for example.
Sure, or anybody. There's a consistency of vision there, And my overall thought about this stuff has been, I was telling Carlton I might have built myself a nice coffin here. But writing got me into this, and writing's going to have to get me out. And that's usually how I approach every problem like this. And I tend to, I really trust the process, and I don't know that it works if I do anything besides follow my obsessions and my fascinations and the things I want to discuss. So I'll just keep doing that until somebody makes me stop.
I think that seems like a very common element, that to kind of put yourself in a pressure situation is actually, there's this kind of weird joy and comfort in that, in creation that comes out of having your back up against the wall. And
If you make it.
if you make it.
I mean, there is
Right.
really, you're talking about keeping that fear going, which is, I feel like that the challenge aspect of television, having been on other shows and watching people go through it, and then to sort of have it take it on, you relish, at least in hindsight, any change, any chance of being painted into a box, especially if you don't want to repeat yourself, which is, a big challenge for all of us. So you really, really get to a place where you're like, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that, or, I lost this actor, how am I going to figure this out? I'm in a new place. Like, it was part of the reason why we started skipping time between seasons. I mean, the very first time, between first and second seasons, I had a bunch of stories when I did the first season of Mad Men. I had nothing when I did the second season, except for a couple of ideas. And so I was like, well, I guess it's a challenge. I guess I'll sort of figure out what it is. I guess I'll have to start spinning this thing up. I have great people that I'm working with. I don't work alone. I hire amazing writers, and they come in right away with their enthusiasms for the show, with their personal lives. Forget about just like script work and things like that. To have someone drop a story in your lap that happened to them that they sometimes don't even know is a story. Or they tell it to you like it really happened and they made it up. I always love that. I've been guilty of that. Once I realized David Chase was not interested in anything that wasn't real, I would always present things as if it had happened to me. And he would always cry bullshit, because eventually he didn't believe anything, whether it had happened to me or not. But that problem that you get, the big problem that's, whether it's continuing, that is the thing that keeps you going. Yeah. And whether you can conquer it or, just doing it, just executing it is satisfying in a very unique way.
Yeah, I think it's just another, these are all permutations of the problem of the blank page, and what you're going to do with it. And it's both terrifying and thrilling. And there's a way in this business, I just started, but you have to get off on the pressure somewhat. Right. Or else you can't do anything. Or
you have to find a way to not become incapacitated by the pressure.
Right.
That's really what I found it is like, for some reason or other, I am a person who feels better when I'm writing. As hard as it is, as horrible as I think about it happening and like whatever it is, but when I'm actually doing it, it works for me in some way, I'm playing with my trucks.
I think it's, David Milch's, says, never believe anything you think about yourself as a writer when you're not writing.
That's great.
That's great.
A healthy fear of failure helps too.
Fear of failure?
Yeah. I've a lot of experience with failure, and I hate it and I don't want it to. I mean, it's going to happen again, but it's like electroshock therapy. I don't want it. So combined with the pressure that you put on yourself, that's pretty much the jet fuel for writing. and I'm sorry, the fact that you do. When you're writing well, when you know when you're not, when you're slogging through it and it's all coming like molasses, you know something's wrong. But when you're writing well, it really feels so. There's nothing like it, and you want it, like the golfer who hacks his way around a golf course all day long, but then for some reason, you don't know why, just hits a beautiful shot. That's the reason they keep coming back to the golf course.
Do you have a non-sports analogy for some of us?
I
don't know what you're talking about.
I don't play golf either, but surely you can understand the metaphor.
Perpetuating a stereotype, which is 100%
You don't have
accurate.
time. You don't have time.
I think about failure all the time because it's where I guess we're just not engineered to enjoy it. Now, I'm same as you. I hate it. It scares the hell out of me. It keeps me awake at night. But when I'm being really honest with myself, it just dawned on me, like not that long ago. It's the only thing I ever learned from is failure. Mm-hmm. It's the only thing any of us really. I say that, because this is the rare success I've had in my career, Breaking Bad, coming off of that, and I don't know what to take from it. I don't know, other than to do my best to enjoy it. It's like, I've never actually solved a Rubik's Cube, but I got a picture. If you're going like this and like some monkey with
This
whatever.
is working better for me.
Finally, you get it right, and you're like, wow, I got the, how the hell am I ever going to do that again? It's like, that's what it feels like.
I think we don't learn from it on some level. Going out for the premiere last week and seeing the show go on the air, and I was like, I just keep sticking my neck out there. Why do I keep doing this? It's so
nerve-wracking.
Keep painting a target on my
terrifying.
back.
Yeah, it's like, wow. You know who needs punching?
But
But the glory is the work. And coming in here and having people say that they watched the show and enjoyed it, and the response that you have, and I don't want to get too deep into the psychological profile of a writer, but we have a lot in common. All of us know that we have a lot in common. Childhoods, parents, a lot of the experiences very common, kind of shocking. And there is something about being heard and the chance to have that sort of controlled communication that I think is worth the failure. It's worth all the failures, and I think most of us don't even know what our failures are. I'm always shocked when I hear what the failures
can name
are.
them.
What?
Wait, you know his or you know yours?
You know mine.
But
You don't have any.
But there's different, maybe we should differentiate between the types of success, because there's something that might hit an audience really big and might be seen as a popular success that you're not satisfied with, right? And
Sorry about that sound, but yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I think there needs to be kind of a personal meter there, and like when you're saying we don't really know what our failures are and stuff, I know it's never that abstract idealization I had before we actually started getting into the nitty-gritty of getting the words down in the right order and then executing it as a performance. This is just only to say that I could see doing something that was publicly not successful, but regarding it as a personal triumph, And I don't know, I think that's important for any creator. Always have the audience in mind, but be careful of what your yardsticks are, I guess.
That's good advice. Hard to take, but good advice. But
If you stay off the internet, it's easy.
that does help, and I gotta second that. I agree with that. That's the first rule. You gotta stay the hell off the internet.
The first month of the show, I was still reading comment sections.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And then
Don't do that.
they had an intervention with me. Everybody sat me down, and I was like,
Good luck if you can
You gotta
stay
go
out of that.
Promises Malibu or something.
Now I have.
You're gonna have to go into rehab every once in a while.
Yeah, I just
it's
left it,
irresistible, especially if things go well. You get drawn back in again.
But I left social media, and I got in touch with all these friends that I hadn't talked to in years because I'm used to just liking pictures of their kids and stuff, and now I can't do that anymore.
What's the sort of the toughest part of the process? Whether it's the dialogue, whether it's the story, whether it's a big arc coming. What
Structure and shape for me. I mean, dialogue is fun, and it's that's sort of that's the hot fudge. I mean, it's the structure and the shape. It's the what we're doing now on this spinoff, Better Call Saul. We're sitting around the room just like we did on Breaking Bad, and we use the word shape a lot. What's the shape of this thing? There's pleasing shapes structurally, and then there are less than pleasing shapes, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to put into words. Hope you know it if it's right, and if it's wrong, something is just always itching at you.
It's akin to musical structure almost,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Like if you can't play an instrument, you can still hear that somebody messed up.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
I may be saying the same thing as they did, but it's intention and obstacle for me. I love dialogue, and I love writing dialogue, and I am not a natural storyteller the way everyone else is at this table. I'm not the guy sitting around the campfire, and I've got a million of them. Dialogue has always sounded like music to me, and I wanted to imitate the sound of that. And I kind of consider plot and story to be this necessary intrusion on what I'm really trying to do. So I have to start with a very strong intention, a very strong obstacle, or I will just write pages and pages that go nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, it requires this immense discipline to do the hard story work, and I think that's, and avoid the many distractions, particularly when you're in the middle of making a show and somebody wants to show you like pictures of cars or like wardrobe, and but you have to basically say,
Right.
no, I'm in the room and I'm trying to figure out like what is the structure of this episode.
There are 17 key rings. Choose the one that you want. Oh.
Yeah, but it's more enjoyable to choose the key ring than it is to figure out your narrative intention.
I don't know what I'm looking for when I'm looking at the key rings. I've lost.
It's all hard, but for me, the hardest part is knowing what's good and what isn't. And I personally cannot tell the difference, and I rely on the people who are part of the show with me, particularly the writing staff, to figure that out. And I'm kind of passive in that way. I know what it feels like in my gut, and I know when I sit down to write it, then when it's tapped out. But that's always really, really hard. That and getting a show to time. Getting a show to time is very painful, and in the end, you don't miss anything, but you're mad at yourself for shooting stuff you didn't need.
Are you usually long or short?
Always long.
Always long.
Always long.
Yeah.
And I want it to be a little fat because I can cut out things I don't like, and sometimes there's turns in the dialogue in the scene that helps an actor get through it that you can just take out, and they got there,
Usually long enough that just one more scene, it's a two-parter. So
I never have enough for that. I'm always like
got
3
plenty. You
minutes.
can have-
I'm always 3 minutes over.
I'm curious, there's nothing more frightening than sharing a first draft of something you've written with someone. And I'm curious, Anne, who do you trust the most to read?
The other writers in the room. The writers I've picked who, we're one mind. I mean, it's really a collective. It's not necessarily a democracy, but we're all one mind at a certain point. So it's those people.
Is there anyone
much.
outside the workspace who you trust?
I mean, historically in my career, sure. I have a handful of writers and friends who I've depended on for honest appraisals of, movie work. But in terms of this, it's a collective, and you've picked those writers. I think the hardest part, to go back to that question, is just knowing when the outlines, we work from very, carefully wrought outlines. And it's knowing when, it's that thing of following your instincts and just knowing when it isn't good enough, and to keep going. Let's do another pass, let's do another, and not letting a writer start until it really is ready. And then getting good notes from people to make it better.
And how much are your scripts changing while you shoot? Are they pretty set?
Someone once said the script is guilty. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. The script is innocent until proven guilty, and I kind of do.
I've never heard that.
That's good.
Yeah, and I kind of believe that, and that's kind of the rule on the set is, do it the way it's written. We've spent many, 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 many hours doing it, but at the same time, you'd be an idiot not to let certain people do improvs. John Voight, I mean, in the pilot, came up with this thing when he was with the hooker in the room, and
The dance.
and he was hot. Yeah, and I mean, the dance was built in, but he kind of did this dialogue that when, and the scene wasn't long. The shot was kind of over before it started, and I just thought, this is gold. This man dancing with this woman, and she's kind of the candy in the room, and it was so interesting. So I mean, you want to leave room for those happy accidents and those serendipitous moments where people are really so deeply wedded to the character.
I love that feeling too, and so much of it is the magic of having great actors, and realizing that and I love.
You don't
writing,
need much.
Yeah, I love
There it
writing
is.
fun dialogue, but the lesson of the editing room that I love, and I love relearning it over and over again on episode after episode, is, we can cut all this stuff out because these wonderful actors can say it with a look.
Yeah.
You didn't think anyone would get it,
Yeah.
and they walked in the room and they got it.
Yeah.
It's shocking,
Yeah.
especially when you're directing too, a script that you wrote, and you're kind of like, this is a big waste of time. You could have John Hamm could just walk in and stare at the guy, and I think it's over. And by the way, and there will always be some writer on the staff who are like, didn't we tell you just to have him come in and stare, and you didn't think it would work?
We started this conversation talking about sort of moving on, doing the next thing. Vince, in your case, you are sort of moving on with one of your characters and hopefully more of your characters. Spin-offs can be tricky, particularly with something so beloved and in this case, so recent. What has that sort of process been like for you, and has there been sort of any hesitations now that you're in the throes of it?
It opens you up to a lot of fears, like, is this going to be Frasier or is it going to be After MASH? I mean, it's and I don't know yet. I mean, honestly, I don't know. If it's After MASH rather than Frasier, it won't be for a lack of hard work and wishful thinking and a lot of smart people doing their best. But you just don't know till the world takes it, or it's whatever. But I figured the best thing to do is just keep moving on to the next thing, plugging on to the next thing, because I suspect if I had taken a year off or more, I would have. I keep using the expression, got to get back up on the horse, which is an odd thing to say after a successful ride, rather than going over the stirrups or whatever the hell. I don't know all the horse parts, but the hooves or whatever falling down and the horse shit, and then. It seems like an odd statement to say, get back up on the horse after something good happened, but we're deep into it right now. It just came over here from the writer's room, and we're a week behind. And we're probably going to be 2 weeks behind at the end of this week. And but it's a high-class, I love what you said earlier, Aaron. It's a high-class problem, a problem I didn't know I would ever face. And it's a better problem than sitting around brooding and thinking, there's not enough time to worry about. I am worried whether it may turn out history, such as history takes note of such things. It may turn out that this was a mistake to do this, but there's not time enough. There's time to worry about it a little bit, but not to fixate on it at this point. And I think that's the ultimate good thing for me personally.
You took no time off at all?
Well, it's about. That was off. I was off maybe for a couple months, but I was doing a lot of press during it. It was press in some fun places
Right.
I'd never been to. Like I'd never been to Berlin. I'd never been to places like that. But it was, you know how it is. You're still working, so it's
Right. But you never let the wheel stop.
They never really stopped because I was talking about the last show, right up till we started on the new show. So, but I don't think it's a bad thing. What's that old expression? You can rest when you're dead. And that gets closer by the minute. So,
there's been advice about resting and so forth, and I definitely am anticipating the concept of it. But I mean, part of being a writer is it's a myth that you ever stop
And I know
stealing
you
from
a
other
little
people
bit.
that you're around.
I know you a little bit. You're gonna get on to the next thing, and you're gonna
Absolutely.
because
I'm going to get on your staff.
it's like sitting
Let you drive.
But sitting, you're like, everyone thinks they want the vacation, and then it turns out the vacation, then you're restless after the first week, maybe.
You never enjoy that vacation.
No.
You take it and you never enjoy it.
Yeah. You're right.
There's some sabbatical you
mine.
must have taken. Did you take time off?
You did
You
well
did
on
it?
your vacation.
I did.
Tell us how to do.
Well,
I heard there's like a 6 weeks, like if you make it through 6 weeks, like you're...
I didn't have 6 weeks. By the time we finished post and I needed to start the room again and get ready to, I was
Having another season of the
That
show,
kind of
that is not a real
vacation you can
vacation.
enjoy.
Yeah.
The vacation
I'm talking
of,
about the vacation
I'm done
of-
with Mad Men, I'm done with Breaking Bad, I'll just relax for a while until I start thinking again. That's never going to happen.
No, actually it did. I actually enjoyed, post-Lost, I did enjoy it. I went hiking in Switzerland with my daughter, which was kind of completely awesome. And I would say like for about 3 or 4 months, I was so exhausted. I mean, I had just monastically been devoted to that show for 6 years, and it was a network show, so we made 121 episodes of the show. And and I was just recharging my batteries. I read books.
But let's just remember, when you were done, what you did was make your daughter walk uphill for no reason. Okay? That's what happened to you.
Well, he didn't want to go to Hawaii. I mean, obviously he had to change it.
I want to hear her version of this vacation. Dad was just like, he was so worried and kept checking his phone to see if anybody'd watched the show. And
Well, the need for a vacation just sort of figures into my next question, which is the amount of stress you're all under, which is sort of hard to even fathom sometimes, between contract negotiations and all the money that's at stake and all the personalities you're trying to satiate and keep happy. How are you able to maintain your post as this quote-unquote CEO of your shows and tune out all the noise and tune out all the stress and not let it affect your work? Like, what are your strategies for that? Because I have to imagine it's only getting more difficult.
And keeping the morale up on a show.
Right.
I think it's one moment at a time for me. It's like you just deal with whatever's in the headlights at the moment and don't worry about what's not in the headlights.
Excuse me.
no, go ahead.
I'm actually big on morale at the show. I want everybody to be really psyched when they're at work, but as soon as you come to grips with the fact that trying to figure out what it is everybody wants and then trying to give it to them is a bad recipe for any kind of storytelling. As soon as you can get your arms around that and realize that all you can do is write something that you like, that you think your friends will like, and then keep your fingers crossed that enough other people will like it that you can continue doing it. As soon as you can get there, you're throwing a lot of stuff you don't need overboard.
But there are conflicts on set inevitably, whether it's someone that's not happy with what's happening to their character, whether it's a problem with the network, the studio, and you guys are all in charge. You are ultimately, at the end of the day, the boss, and you have to sort of deal with it.
I think it's about, sorry to cut you off, it's prioritizing. It really is. Like, which problem do I have to deal with right now? And really being able to just figure out what are the things that are essential that I deal with today, and letting the other stuff, because you would lose your mind. I mean, it's really stressful.
You're making hundreds of decisions. And you really have to, which is the most exhausting thing in the world, especially, I mean, I thought I was an indecisive person, and then I started making hundreds of decisions. And you push some of them off, and people think you're procrastinating, but you really made 50 other decisions here. The medicine for me is, again, to bring it up, but like, I am surrounded by really, really funny people. And they totally have I didn't realize that my mood could emanate into an organism of 300 people. So I felt a little bit of responsibility to not be as moody as I am. But there's a lot of cheer and like going down to the set, which I don't get to be on that often, and swinging by the base camp where the actors are bullshitting, and then going to the writer's room and hearing what everybody watched on TV last night because I didn't do it, you know? Sort of like, well, you know, I had to worry about this, I worried about this, and, you know, someone tells you that, you know, there was a fire in the kitchen, and you're like, oh, I didn't even know that, I just went to the fridge, you know, that's what it is. You are in a bubble on some level so that you can, you know, your brain in a jar sometimes.
We had a guy bit by a rattlesnake, one of our crew.
Did you not know about it?
No,
yeah,
I didn't know about it until later.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. He's okay?
Thank goodness.
What I was laughing at was that you didn't know, not that a guy got bit like that.
Well, if you knew me better, you wouldn't. You'd say, yeah, one of our figures, yeah.
But Vince, you forgot to drink water when you were filming the finale, and you became too engrossed. So that was a cautionary tale.
I shot the first day of shooting. We were in this really fancy mansion. And it was really nice people who owned it, but we were all very nervous. We're all wearing blue space booties and whatnot. Don't want to bring any food in the set, so I wasn't drinking water, and I felt fine. And then the next morning, I felt like I had the flu. And man, being dehydrated just sucks. I was lying in my office in Albuquerque with an oxygen mask on, and he had stuck a needle in my arm, and he hung the saline bag on my floor lamp. And I took like 2 bags, and I'm like drinking water like crazy. Man, I feel like don't do that. The dehydration
But
is
it's
bad.
simple stuff like that. It's getting enough sleep. Do you know? It really is. I mean, it's just eating well, getting enough sleep. You know,
See, I don't
I
can't sleep, and
you know, I'll make myself get off the iPad. You know, I just put it away because I know it's too much stimulation. I
can sleep through a production meeting. But I can sleep in the afternoon. But when it comes at nighttime, you know, I was like, you get in such a zone, especially, you know, I know it's not 22 a year, but you're just like, you're writing so much. I was joking, like I get home sometimes at night and I lay in bed and I go, oh, this is the part where the guy goes to sleep. You know, you're really like not, you know, and luckily I don't need that much.
You guys have written a lot of characters over the course of your careers. I'm curious, looking back, is there one where you were sort of most at ease writing for?
Well, I have a more limited resume.
Yep.
So yeah, I could write Russ Cole for forever and ever. I mean, that's
You
just
won't.
easy. No.
Sadly.
Well, Matthew and I will definitely do something else again. But you know, it was like I got all these letters like, are you really not going to bring back Cole and Hart? Like that's so stupid. Like, what do you like? Why won't you bring? I hate you. Why, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys need to write Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Don't write to me.
It's again with the not reading the letters. Stay away.
Yeah.
What about the rest of you? And is there one that comes to mind, whether it's recent or in the past?
I didn't know I could write TV till I was lucky enough for Chris Carter to hire me onto the X-Files, and that was I was so lucky to have that job. And it got to the point, and that's the other thing too. I mean, you know, well, you've done some network, but you two gentlemen, especially coming out of doing a lot of network, The West Wing and Lost. You do so many episodes, and that was my only network experience, and it's just this endless grind. But I would hear their voices in my head, and it sounds a little, you know, but it felt like transcription. Mm-hmm. And that's a nice. I mean, again, once the structure was in place, because as you said, once you have that outline, once you have those cards, once you have that freedom, it does not sound like freedom. Ironically, it sounds like stricture. It sounds like.
But restrictions can be free.
And knowing where you're going, yeah.
But that's also like, that's the thing that's the most enjoyable, because as we're, you know, discussing problems and all the other things, when you actually carve out that moment and you're there and you're with your characters and you're inhabiting their world and you're writing them, I mean, that's the most enjoyable part of the time. I loved writing for Josh Holloway on Lost. I mean, I think the Sawyer character was just kind of acerbic and irreverent and kind of a bad boy, and it was just kind of pure fun.
Hurley must have been fun.
And Hurley, I mean, the stuff that was actually kind of more kind of comedic and slightly less, you know, there was a lot of earnestness that was part of Lost, and so I think some of the characters that were kind of counterpoint to that were fun to do.
Yeah. What about you, Aaron? You've had quite a few.
There's never been a time really when writing was easy. There have been plenty of times when it was fun, when I knew what I was doing, when I knew what the scene was. I don't want to pick a favorite character.
Right.
It feels wrong somehow.
Yes, not a favorite.
The one
Yes.
you had the easiest time maybe writing.
You know, I play all the characters as I'm writing them. Very physical when I'm writing. I'm jumping up and down and I'm acting it out. You know, there were times when I was No, I don't think that there's one where I had an easy assignment.
Leave him the hell
and
alone.
they're none of them autobiographical.
I think if you ask him one more time.
Listen, again, it goes smoothly when I know what this scene is about and what needs to be accomplished in this scene, and
When
I'm
there's
confident
conflict
in that.
in the scene
and
and
when
there's
I
story,
don't, it doesn't.
it's
And
always-
it breaks down that way.
I have a question, sort of maybe going back in the recesses of your resumes. What has been the most embarrassing moment for you as a writer that you've experienced?
Oh, good God, we're not going to tell you.
Embarrassing moment as a writer.
You mean like something that we've written?
Yeah, yeah, something that you've written that maybe you got not the feedback you were looking for, or maybe somebody wrote something about something that you'd written that was definitely not what you were hoping for.
I got one. It was I don't know if it's, it's the one that pops to mind. I've probably done more embarrassing things than this. This was pre-internet too, but I wrote some scene where Mulder was talking about, some victim of a kidnapping siding with her kidnapper, and I wrote it as Helsinki syndrome. And because it's Stockholm syndrome, but I wrote it as Helsinki syndrome.
You were too tired.
Well, and also because I think it's a joke in the first Die Hard movie where someone says Helsinki syndrome, like Helsinki.
It's a malapropism.
Yeah, like, and then David Duchovny, who's like a brilliant guy, he did the scene. I think he was the one saying the lines. He did the scene, then he came to me, hey, I like that shout out you gave to Die Hard with the Helsinki syndrome. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, because it's Stockholm syndrome. Or was it like some weird copyright thing where you couldn't? I was like,
It's copyrighted.
Stockholm syndrome is copyrighted.
I was like, oh shit.
The season finale of the Newsroom last year, Jane Fonda had a throwaway line. She was stoned and she said, I'm going to get the Allman Brothers back together. And a few days after it aired, I got a letter from the Allman Brothers manager saying the Allman Brothers never broke up.
Oh, God.
And that they were understandably offended. I was knocked out that the Allman Brothers watched the Newsroom. That was my takeaway, but I couldn't apologize enough.
I have so many embarrassing stories. I am usually on set. The weirdest thing for me is, for some reason or other, when there are love scenes, and I'm on basic cable and they require a lot of choreography, for some reason or other, when I go in and start talking to the actors, I always end up playing the woman. Because I feel awkward, like being the guy with the actress, and invariably end up with like John Hamm just looking at me like, really, you did this again? And I'm like, we're not gonna make out, obviously, but I mean, it was the first time it was pointed out to me was pretty deep into the show, and that was really, really embarrassing. They're like, one time you should play the guy. Like, okay.
Oh, I have one. I don't even know if I can tell it.
Well, now you're required.
Well, it's behavior. It's not writing, but it has to do with, John Voight was, incarcerated in a scene in a cinder block cell, and he needed to behave. This is so disgusting. I don't think I can do it. But
Yes, you can.
You'll censor it out.
This is gonna be your closing
But
thought.
he needed to pretend. He's a very outre character and rather foul-mouthed, and it just felt right that he stands up and pretends he's a chimp. And in his state of rage at being in a cell again, he jerks off and kind of throws it into the camera that is watching him. And John and I were standing near a large group of people, and I was pantomiming how to do this to him. And I just thought it was so wrong on so many levels. I mean, one of the greatest actors ever. First of all, that I'm instructing him how to do it.
And known for his masturbating.
But instructing him to be a chimp and jerk off. The whole thing was so wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I just realized people were staring at us. I was pantomiming this with great abandon.
They are so brave, right?
Oh my God.
And every time we get caught doing that,
It was just
You're
appalling.
every time you get caught acting
that's
the way the
embarrassing.
stuff they do. Oh, that's really
I said,
embarrassing.
how dare I do this on every level? I hope that doesn't make
It all speaks to the amazing contributions that you all make to your shows, the unheralded contributions until now. So thank you so much. And I'm so sorry to say we are out of time.
Thank you very much.
That's pretty hard to top, honestly.
Thank you all of you.
Good seeing you guys.
Yeah, you too.
But you're
You're up in Ojai, so.